great pleasure to introduce Dr. Kiryar Ensayan, who is the Director of the Center for Energy and Environmental Education at the University of Northern Iowa. He was the 2008 recipient of the Sustainable Agriculture Achievement Award. He was on the City Council in Cedar Falls for 8 years and has lived in Iowa for over 20. Please welcome Dr. Ensayan.
Thank you. All right. Have a seat. Thank you so much. It really is a great honor to be with you. It's so amazing that so many of you are interested in this topic and all the other topics that Jeff talked about. I come to Iowa City often. I have a lot of friends in Iowa City, and many of the people who always inspire me are here. Mike, Kurt, Joe, Senator Bolcom. I mean, just so many New Pioneer, the work of New Pioneer. Always, that's where I always go every time I'm in Iowa City.
Request to be at the microphone.
Okay, so, all right. So, really wonderful to be here. And in this case, really, mostly what I want to share with you is the less bad is totally easy. It's going to be a picnic. Usually there's more complicated, but in this case it really is a picnic. It's totally doable, totally low-hanging fruit. We should kind of put that in the bag and kind of develop more confidence and competence to take on much tougher ones, right? The energy and all the other part of the economy. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the work I do. The center at UNI that I'm part of, we mostly do kind of action-oriented projects. We don't give degrees. We're not a research center. We're totally kind of action. Let's go do stuff. My informal slogan is from know how to do now. So let's go do. And we have projects that are related to energy conservation in the community. We run an AmeriCorps program. We have 35 AmeriCorps members that are in 7 communities throughout Iowa where we offer comprehensive energy services to low-income households at no cost to them, and we offer our labor to fix it. We do K through 12 energy education. We have a major local food program where we work with institutions throughout the 6-county area around us. We just this past summer, just example of the kind of projects we do. I worked with a class of students where we from June through October, we ran 2 produce stands in 2 very poor neighborhoods in Waterloo where there's no grocery store, no farmer's market will ever be. And we sourced it all from local farms with the labor of the students. Anyway, it was incredible. So we do that kind of stuff. We're just, let's take on problems, work with community partners, and do stuff. And this is like a perfect example of the kind of work that we could do together. And you guys are already doing, but we could work with many other. I really think if the school district and the city and the county take on this really fairly kind of doable task, it'll inspire so many people throughout Iowa that it's totally doable. Kids shouldn't be exposed to this stuff. So I like to just say, again. So what I like to do is to share kind of with you how I see the situation we're in. So that just to make sure we understand the situation we're in. We've been in it since World War II. And the public health evidence for this trouble. And then kind of make clear that this is a cultural problem. It really isn't a technological, let's go and do, buy something else and we'll solve this. This is totally made up problem in our minds. And as a consequence, we do this sort of thing. And so the solutions are also in our mind. And I'll make a case for that. And then at the end, I'll share a few specific ideas and kind of to make a case that less bad is actually very easy in this case. So I thought I'll start with this. Let me turn this off. Let's see. There we go. That's better. I'll start with this because I was born in 1959 when DDT was at its peak use, and as a kid, I saw it applied in northern Iran where I grew up. It was just common to see it, and that. Way before 1962, when Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, we knew the troubles of that particular pesticide. But just see the time lapse between that time and then until 1972. It took a long time because there was just, again, there was massive marketing and wholesale acceptance of this pesticides as a benign thing. Actually, the sign, it's not very clear, but it says powerful insecticides harmless to humans. So let's see, how do I forward this? Okay, and so there was a lot of marketing that went on to make that stick for as long as it did. And so we are still in that, even though that was 1945, but yes, a few things. Yes, we banned DDT, we banned cyanazine, we banned very few pesticides were banned since then. But we're pretty much still there. We're pretty much in a culture and in an economy that is comfortable with this. And this this is just corn herbicide that's applied, in Iowa annually, and add to that bean herbicides, and you'll end up basically totally combined with herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides. You add up to 50 million a year, roughly, million pounds. So that's another reality that, even though it's not in Iowa City, but the question is, where does this stuff go? Where does this stuff go? So, even though we won't talk about it, and I can tell you, there is ample evidence by my friends, colleagues at Iowa State that it is totally possible to have a very productive agriculture without any of this. That pesticides are not necessary in agriculture at all, and to grow corn and beans and other crops in Iowa in a high yield way. But we won't get into that. So I just wanted to say, but nonetheless, we have to deal with this. And so in our case, in kind of urban settings. This is kind of, you saw the 1945 photo, this is 2015 photo, and things haven't changed all that much. We're still using a, 2,4-D, which was used in Vietnam, is part of Trimac. This is basically kind of a gold standard of all turf management, chemicals. It's dicamba, and 2,4-D and MCPP. There's just 3 herbicides that are part of this. Anyway, so this is kind of the world, and I know one thing I wanted to say, both in this case and in this case, is the situation we're in is that we live at a time where we have a weak regulatory system. So these chemicals circulate in our economy. No problem. You can go and buy this stuff, right? You can go and buy this stuff at Hy-Vee, It's just part of our economy, and therefore we have to have meetings like this, right? To say, oh, well, we really don't want that in our school. So it's very time consuming when we don't have a good regulatory system, so that we have things that we don't need circulating there in large volume. And then we have to kind of become individually protecting our kids and our parks and our, in order to, and it's not good. If you look at other major public health triumphs of our generation, lead, right? Wow, Did we say, well, let's have it, people should just be careful out there, just go wash your hands and stuff, right? We didn't do that. We didn't say, well, no, don't worry about it, lead will be in our economy, just people have to be careful out there. Right, but we're not doing that with pesticides. Pesticides, like in large volume, you just be careful out there. Follow the label. That's the culture. That's the situation we're in. And you can't, even if you're the best farmer, you can't follow the label. There's always a breeze. Again, where is this stuff going to go? Right? It doesn't work that way. It has to be like not part of our economy. If we know it's trouble, then it shouldn't be there at all. If we can, or should be under very restricted conditions. So I thought we'll start out just by being clear. Okay, look, there is plenty of evidence. Okay, plenty of evidence that this stuff is not good. Okay, so I just made a list here, about kind of children's neurodevelopment. There's all kinds of literature, just mounting body of literature that's just incredible. And and it's all preventable. It's all preventable. We don't need to do this. So I'm gonna. Here's one. I thought I'll copy a couple of recent ones. Acute pesticide illnesses associated with off-target pesticide drift, which, by the way, is a big issue in Iowa. There have been multiple farms that have lost their organic certification. They've lost their crops entirely and got out of business because they just can't endure it anymore. And there's a great effort beginning in Iowa to kind of encourage IDALs to beef up their kind of pesticide monitoring, surveillance, and responding to drift, and actually helping reduce drift. Right now, it's just bare minimum. There's nothing there. If you get drifted on, it'll take months before they even know what happened. Anyway, so there's health problems there, and the one that is really in this case that we're all here in town, and there's a lot of evidence about children's exposure. Let me just. It would be. I just want to show you some of the ones that deal with American Journal of Public Health. Children living in households with pesticides use suffer elevated rates of leukemia. Households, garden pesticide use can increase the risk of childhood leukemia. Right? There's all these studies, and this bottom one, it's really an incredible study that demonstrated where they followed moms during pregnancy and after birth, and then they followed the kids. They took urine and blood sample of the mom and then of the baby, and then followed the babies until they were 7, and then they gave them the IQ test, and they found significant differences with kids. The more they had pesticides in their blood, the more neurodevelopmental disorders. I mean, it's very sad and very lifelong. I mean, you can't correct things like that, right? So anyway, there's a lot of data out there. So again, the question is, what do we do? Again, given this situation we're in, and so we're back to a situation where we have to what we can do is kind of do our best in where we live, where we go to school, where in our communities to reduce our own exposure to these things. So find out parks, schools, public spaces, where are some of these, again, the things that we know we can control. And again, kids, you might say, well, kids actually lick the lawn. You and I might not do that. They have much higher exposure than we do. All right. There are, in addition to all the human health problems with herbicides and insecticides and fungicides, collectively called pesticides, there are major water quality and damage to other parts of the ecosystem. There is plenty of evidence there. And so here is where kind of the cultural part comes in, that we have been marketed ever since World War II to believe that good lawns, build morale. That this is very fundamental. That if you you got to be a good neighbor. You got to really spend a lot of money looking after things. So that just, whether we like it or not, that's the mindset of the grounds staff of the school, or of the county, or of or business owners that have lawns. That's just, they want to be good neighbors. They don't, it's not because they love pesticides. It's just that the culture that we're all in has kind of told them through marketing, the message is that this is just ugly and we got to get rid of it. And that if this shows up on your lawn, means you're not a good neighbor, and you're not really taking care of, you're not doing your part in taking care of the neighborhood or this property that your job is to take care of as a groundskeeper of the school or college. Okay, that's where people, because it has been so deep in the mindset, it's really hard to, it occupies a part of brain that is totally irrational about, just gives you a bad feeling, and if these dandelions are there, that means like there's something dirty out there that you haven't cleaned. And you want to be a professional, like, in your work. So that's, this marketing that has gone on for a long time has put us in that position. So that's where we need to kind of change that. That's where we need to kind of say, okay, really we need to rethink the situation. Thank you, Jeff. So this is just outside of my building. To the left is campus. This is kind of south edge of campus. And to the right is a attorney's office. And the attorney's office, they just mow. They don't do anything else, none. And they don't mow that frequently either. To the left is university ground. They mow, they spray, they fertilize. And you can see a huge difference, right? I don't know, I see a huge difference. So this is, on the top is the left, on the top is the university ground, which is fertilized, sprayed, and mowed. On the right, so this is a closer look at the same spot. I just look close. So you can see, after all that, university's lawn still has a few dandelions, and this attorney's office still has a few dandelions. That's it. Wow. Right? Okay, so I want to, so that's the thing. I want to show you a lot of images to help us understand the mindset we've gotten ourselves into that really is like nothing. It's not a big deal, okay? And yeah, I had suggested, I'm continuing, we're having the same issues with our university. I've suggested that this should be Panther lawn, purple and gold, and I mean, we're set. Now you guys need to come up with something like with Hawkeyes or something. See if you can do that. Okay, so I went around, met with our parks division, people in Cedar Falls and in Waterloo, and just in conversation, I said, this park. I mean, you guys. I mean, they're very minimalist about some of these parks anyway. I said, why don't you just say this park is pesticide free? They said, okay. So I made up some signs that I'll show you later. I have some signs that I forgot to bring. I was going to bring a bunch, but I have many of the designs I'll show you. And then so Searley Park it's like a couple of blocks from campus. It's beautiful, heavily used, and it's all surrounded by neighbors. It hasn't been sprayed. I mean, right now, this park hasn't been sprayed for like 15 years. This is what you see. Like, no big deal. People think, if you don't do this, next thing there will be, mountain lions will be coming or something. No, nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to go out. As long as you mow, right? You mow, so, nothing is going to happen. So, okay. So, this is Searley Park. These are all this season. I took a bunch of these photos this season because I'm trying to convince our university. We have new president, new provost, and quite a few new faculty. I'm trying to make another push to kind of say that, hey, we don't have to do all this, So this is a park in Cedar Falls. No, this year was the year of white clover. I mean, there was white clover everywhere somehow. I mean, every year is different, things come, things go. It just changes. That's okay. And we need the biodiversity. We need habitat. We need, it doesn't have to all be one grass, So close up, it looks like this. This is what happened in some places. If you don't spray anything and you just mow, nothing happens. It's like, why don't you just keep the money in your pocket? If you're a school, it means maybe a few $1,000s, depending on how many schools you have, how many acres you have. A bunch of fuel that you didn't use or pay somebody to go, maybe it's outsourced. So it's, there's nothing wrong with this. It's green, you really want the ground to be green so that there's no bare soil to wash away. And this is fine. This is a business near where I live. And here's their lawn. No big deal, right? Their businesses. This is our basketball arena, and our grounds staff was showing me around, and he was very he thought this looked bad, And to me, it's like, this is good. So the thing one of the key ideas I wanted to also point out is, a lot of times, I know in the case of universities, but maybe schools as well, the argument is, well, we want it to be presentable, right? We want it to look nice. Well, otherwise parents of students are going to come to this university when they're touring, and they're going to see some dandelions and they're going to say, what a crappy place, right? And they're not going to come here. Well, when parents come here, they're going to see the landscape, right? It's like the trees. There's so many other things that give you a feeling of a pleasant place. It's not just the lawn. They're not going to go inspect the lawn and say, wow, look at this. They didn't plant seeds here. They're going to come and you feel, what's that?
Salt.
Yeah, salt does that. Yeah, exactly. And of course what happens is, with all this, they pay attention, they spray the lawn and everything, and then those corners, and then they come with their gators, and they go, and that become a big mud hole, and it's really ugly, but that's okay. You see what I mean? So they're like focusing on wrong things. They're focusing on lawn. But if you really look around, you'll see, wow, they've actually invested in other things. These are other examples where it's not all lawn. That really what gives you a sense of that landscape is everything else they've done. And there's beautiful trees, beautiful places. It's not just a lawn. And again, lawn, it could be all that clover. Everything can be in it as long as it's green. And so the other thing that is totally possible, and of course, again, biodiversity is always good, and there's habitat for other critters, and we know pollinators have, their habitat has been reduced dramatically, and so a lot of schools, businesses, colleges have a lot of land that they just keep mowing. Well, really, if my wife, who directs the Tallgrass Prairie Center at UNI, they've done a really good little analysis of, if you kind of convert an acre, what would be the cost of that acre for, let's say, next 20 years of mowing, spraying, all this stuff, versus converting it to prairie. If it's not, if nobody's walking there, just like that in front of that basketball stadium, it's just nothing there. So why not just get it out of, kind of reduce your lawns by planting them to native plants, and then you're good to go. So there's all those things as well. So other good examples that come to mind that are really inspiring. New York schools, since May 2011.
Did you say that there was an actual number put to that, though, the conversion?
I don't have the numbers. Yeah, there was like significant savings once established. There is initial cost of prairie planting, but after that, You got to contact them. They have a little study of that. But yeah, you could, I mean, you won't be mowing, there's no cost. You might have to mow it once a year, something like that, if you don't want to burn it, you know. So again, it would be interesting to find out how they passed that in New York, but of course New York also banned fracking. So there's good organizations like yours here, right? Everybody working together, but in those cases, you know, there were quite a few organizations that have, for a long time, have been working in New York. New York Attorney General office is like major. They have a whole pesticide office that have been going after pesticide companies that have not done their homework and have been missing their data, etc. They've been very active, and so finally it looks like they've been able to pass that. So basically in New York schools, no New York school, you could do that. That would be ideal if we could. Again, I think the momentum of then we don't have to have a lot of meetings like this all over the state, right? But initially we need several cities and counties to do this to inspire many other schools, so that legislators who are in those school districts would feel comfortable saying, yeah, this should really be statewide. So and of course, in Canada, it was really a group of family physicians who pushed for Canada's law. And it's really, I think, adopted by about half of the provinces. So I know in Ontario and quite a few other provinces, basically you can't find the stuff, you know, if you go to a department store. You know, and there have been, a year after its adoption, a group of water quality researchers went and actually looked for those lawn chemicals, and they couldn't find them as much, 80% less in urban streams in Ontario. So now those two are really incredible examples. So I happened to be in Ontario a couple of years ago, and it just happened to be at the peak dandelion time, too. So I was curious to see, well, what does, you know, a whole city look like after several years of no pesticides, right? No lawn chemicals. And so this is the park, you know, just a neighborhood park, an elementary school, you know. So let's see. One of the things that I've talked maybe with a few people is often when you approach a school, they say, or a city, or a business, or in our case, a university, saying, well, what do we'd like you to do to not spray. They say, well, what's your alternative? You know, what's your alternative? And by that they mean, what else can we buy and apply so that it totally is weed-free? That's what they mean. They say, because they said, oh, organic is going to cost a lot to have an organic lawn. Okay, like to go and buy a lot of stuff to make it totally weed-free with no, you know, hazardous chemicals. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I think a lot of us are saying. We're saying, no, just subtract pesticides, replace it with management. Yes, that's really what we want. But everybody keeps saying, well, and number one is changing our perception of our expectations of seeing this, you know, weed-free lawn. So that's really important. These are all schools. I love this. You know, an elementary school, a secondary school, just this is what should look like. This is normal. Just relax. You know, just everybody relax. You know, don't worry about it. Worry about other things. That's really, to me, that's the logic that we need to, and athletic fields. That's another thing. People say, yes, but what about athletic fields? Yes, athletic fields, if you know, it's like any kind of vegetation you want, you got to manage it somehow. To what standards do you want? If you want it to be absolutely weed-free, it is possible without pesticides. You just have to put some resources into it. Instead of putting resources into spraying everything, all the money you saved by not spraying everything, you can now spend some time and manage the athletic field so that it doesn't have, it's totally covered with grass. It's totally possible. Yes, there will be a few dandelions, but so what? But yes, athletic fields require more management. But you gotta kind of depends on what you want. What's your goal? And so you could look at a school, a college, saying, well, what do we want? I mean, if it's just this piece of grass sitting in front of a building, it doesn't. Nobody walks on it. It's not compacted. Nothing. Just leave it alone. Just mow it. If you want to have lawn, maybe we don't want to have lawn. We want to have other vegetation. So these are all in Ontario. Okay, these are again a place where nobody sprays. Okay, so again, things haven't gone drastically bad, because that's the worry, is that there's something bad going to happen, and things are going to go totally out of control, and it's just not an issue. That's why I'm saying this is a less bad thing that's really fairly easy to do. So let's do it. But the best part of it is we're going to reduce exposure of all these kids whose systems are still developing, and they're unnecessarily exposed to this stuff. I mean, that's the part that really is totally unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable. The way things are. Okay, so even here's Home Depot. It's all the dandelions. No big deal, because they're relaxed. They're relaxed. This is what it looks like. It doesn't mean they're not taking care of the place. It doesn't mean they're less responsible. Again, the family physicians in Ontario were the people who really pushed and made a case for this. This is a library in one of the suburbs of Toronto. Again, the yellow that you see on the lawn isn't actually dandelion, it's bird's foot trefoil. It's this beautiful legume that likes kind of disturbed soil and compacted soil. And here's like a rec center. You just see what makes a place beautiful isn't the lawn, it's all this other stuff that, here's a Panera, so awful. Isn't the landscape awful? They haven't sprayed. So here's the basic ideas, that whether it's the county, whether it's University of Northern Iowa, whether it's the school district, given the medical evidence that's out there, it just seems prudent to commit to pesticide-free landscape. It's just like, let's just not mess with it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. And let's focus on management strategies rather than pesticides. Pesticides, they don't improve soil. They don't do anything. They just kill the weeds, and they don't do anything for you. And if you really want the place, let's focus on all the other strategies we know, which is mow high, build the soil, add compost, all the things that Fred and a lot of people know, and turf, people who care for turf, they know this stuff. And then, of course, build staff capacity so that they feel comfortable. They feel there are other people out in the city. Just like practical farmers of Iowa, like organic farmers, they need each other, If to feel that they're not the only people out there doing this. There's other people who support them, that this is good. And of course, it's really important to communicate, to publicize, and to inspire other schools. Whatever it is that you adopt here, it's really important to kind of share with others. So one of the things we did is, over the years, one of my friends and I designed all of these. We just and then they're kind of this size signs, and you can stick them in your lawn, in your yard. So we have different, the Panther lawn is one of our recent ones, and it's supposed to be purple. Somehow it's not, the color isn't coming. So that was purple and gold lawn. And then, of course, Freedom lawns, like patriotic, and then nature, and we just figured what people were interested in, and we just printed a bunch of them, and sometimes when we're somewhere, we sell them for a few dollars or we just give them away. But again, we really don't. I'm in the process of kind of ramping up a campaign in our town with my students, and so we're going to revisit, reprint a bunch of these, So anyway, so it's really important to kind of get that going, and again, for schools to communicate that more. I think this is my very last slide. One other thing I was going to say here. Let me back up. About this one is this IPM idea. Okay, you've heard of this integrated pest management, IPM. Everybody, so if you look at every school, every place that is supposed to have a IPM policy, they usually have one. It's like somewhere in their policy is an IPM. But then, so the whole idea of IPM is that you kind of think broadly, and you have lots of tools and lots of management strategies, and then pesticides are just one of many things that are there, and that would be your last resort thing. You exhaust all the other possibilities. You do planning, you do thinking, everything like that. It's like a philosophy. Integrated pest management is a philosophy. But in practice, what happens is that philosophy stays in that policy in some drawer. And then just there is regular spraying. What? Regular spraying? It's like, doesn't make sense. I thought we were doing IPM. That you do all these other things and take care of the problem rather than just spraying. So you just kind of be cautious of that. You can put a lot of things in writing saying, oh yeah, we have an IPM, our university has an IPM, City of Cedar Falls has an IPM, Cedar Falls School District has IPM policy. It's written. But we spray the parks or the school grounds every year. It's not about any of that. So I'll stop there. I want to see what you guys, there's wealth of information right here. I just mostly wanted to show you images that saying, look, this is totally doable, totally doable. Yes, yeah. Thank you.
When I first got interested in this issue, but quite a long time ago, in the 80s, early 80s, and I went to the city council and asked if they could pass down ordinance, about pesticides, to try to improve the water and whatnot. And they told me no, that they couldn't do anything about it because it was in the state code that no governmental entity could pass any kind of regulation about this in Iowa.
That's true.
The pesticide companies got to the legislature and got that in there, and it's very clear. I went and looked at it.
Yeah, totally.
And the thing that we really got to do is try to get rid of that. And have you tried anything? Have you tried to tell people about that being there?
Yeah, I know that passed, actually the year we came here, it passed in 93, and it's kind of like the permit process for hog lots where counties can't do that, right? Counties can't do that, just the state can do it. It's a preemption law. They passed that exactly as you said. Some chemical companies went to the state house. They said, well, it'll create a patchwork. That's their favorite phrase, patchwork of rules. And we want one rule. And so they passed it. And so yes, unless that changes. But that doesn't mean the city of Iowa City or county can say, well, on our own property, we're not going to do it. Or school can say, on our own property, we're not going to do it. So, unfortunately, that's where we are. Or it could be statewide, as the state of New York did, or where we say no schools or daycare centers, schools. There's a lot of different possibilities. But yes, cities right now, they can't do it. They're just saying passing an ordinance for the city. Yes.
Just to clarify that, so the city can't ban herbicide applications citywide, but it can choose to not do it at all on its own property.
Exactly. Yep.
But the trouble with that is that it doesn't do anything to legislatively to encourage people not to use them in their yard. And they're even worse, because people who do that really don't watch the labels, and they have had no training in how to do anything safely. And all of that goes into the water,
Yeah.
when it rains, and it's terrible.
Don't you think though that would, if the city said, okay, we can't pass an ordinance because of the law, but we're gonna designate these city properties to be pesticide free and put up signs and hand out signs, whoever wants to have the signs, don't you think that would have a ripple effect?
Oh, I think it
Public
would
at
help
large.
a lot, sure.
Is that something that would interest people in this room?
And kind of to add to that, I really think the combination of city and schools and county all kind of saying, look, yes, we know we can't do this, but we're going to demonstrate that on our own property and to inspire. I think that'll be very powerful, not just here, but statewide. It'll inspire so many parents, so many other council members and supervisors in other. It's so clear, and you could get many pediatricians to be in favor of that. And I already have heard from several physicians who really say, yeah, they would help with that, something like that. Yeah, there's so many hands up. Fred, you had, yeah.
Yeah, what I would love to see, if the city can't pass ordinance, say, no pesticides, it can pass ordinance to reward people for doing alternatives. So what if we had some sort of property tax incentive to say, a certain percentage of your landscape is not lawn, or landscape is not lawn, you got a tax break.
Okay.
So we're going beyond just doing what's harm.
Totally. Okay, I have an idea. In Cedar, I don't know if it crosses that line between for preemption or not, whether it would be considered. It's not. I don't think it'll be an ordinance. It's an incentive program. So, I don't know. In Iowa City, do you guys pay stormwater utility?
Yep.
How much is yours?
$14 a year.
$14. Wow, in Cedar Falls was $3. But larger entities like Target, they paid like thousands of dollars. But in Cedar Falls, so what if that was part of that stormwater saying, well, if you demonstrate that you don't spray, then your fee will be waived. How about that?
We tried to get that about rain barrels and rain gardens, and they wouldn't let us have it.
Who is they?
The city, they want their $14 a year.
I see. Okay, so that's doable then. So it potentially doable. I mean, I think Fred's suggestion is a good one. So yeah, you had.
I've been contacted the city through the Parks and Recreation Department, and they have assured me twice now that for the past 2 years, Iowa City has not contracted out for any application of pesticides, and that they do not apply any themselves. And I know that in the little park where I walk my dog all the time, they clearly are not spraying there because there's a beautiful lawn there, but it's not weed-free by a long shot. And I have pressed them twice about that, and they've done nothing to publicize that. So I think whoever was mentioning that as an idea, that would be that's an incentive to people, just to say that the city of Iowa City is
Totally.
no longer doing this. And I've been working on this school pesticide thing. I'd just like to say that I don't know whether this is still the case, but I did find it amusing that when the county put in the new Health and Human Service Administration building down on the corner of Dubuque Street, down there by the administration building, that little patch of lawn that's got to be about a 6-foot wide strip around that whole building used to get an application of pesticides on it. And this was where people were going to get information about, health and human services. So it just seemed like
I think what you bring up is one really important point. One is that knowing what is happening getting a baseline of, okay, what is exactly the numbers for the city right now? What are the current practices? The same with schools. Because you might find that maybe the county or city or schools are doing, say, a lot of good things, and then there are just some things that maybe they could do less of, right? And I think for them to find out that there is a huge support for that, they'll be more encouraged. So that's a really good point, yes.
Well, the county has left off spraying along roadsides, years ago.
That's right, yeah.
But the trouble is that it hasn't been publicized widely
Yeah.
enough.
They're spraying now.
There's those.
What,
They're
they're still
spraying
doing it
now.
now? They're doing it now?
They've been spraying.
Because they had stopped it for a while. But another thing is that we gotta quit using the word peace.
Yeah.
Because it has a pejorative tone. And it'd be better if we just switch the whole discussion, which, some political parties are really good at doing, and start calling it diversity. Saying it's diversity law instead of weedy law.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I work for the city of Iowa City, and I tried to get some information before I came here tonight, and spoke to the superintendent of Parks and Recreation, who also assured me that not only do they not spray pesticides or no pesticides at all, they only use herbicides very, very seldom on invasive species. But he said this is a piece of information, our next fiscal year, there's absolutely nothing in the budget for lawn chemicals. And I ran into a situation earlier this year as part of what I do for enforcement with the Iowa River Trail between Highway 6 and south of Highway 6 along the river. A very large area of teasel, which is a very invasive species. And it was a combination of school district land and our land. And when I was talking to both sides on how they were going to manage this, school district was, well, we're going to spray it. Our park superintendent said, we're not. And basically, with that sort of proactive stance, convince the schools not to spray as well. I mean, this was literally 30 feet
Great.
away from the river.
Yeah, that's.
It's more difficult. It takes a lot more time and a lot more energy to get rid of these invasive species. But I think there's a lot of, within the city, there's a lot of really thoughtful
Yeah.
sort
Totally.
of stance towards this sort
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah. Now, one thing, now that's great, that's great. The same, as I said, my experience in Cedar Falls and Waterloo with the parks has been very similar. They, when they started doing stuff, they started, and so a lot of times they say, well, but when we get complaints, right, they say, oh, well, but people call and say, why is this looking like that? I said, well, if you have a written policy, you say, no, don't worry about it. We're on top of this. We're not neglecting it, right? The city staff doesn't want to come across as they're neglecting anything. Nobody wants to. And we just got to be clear. No, look, we're taking care of this. It's just that we're not going to spread. We have other strategies. And now one thing I wanted to mention, people often confuse the word pesticide. I think if you ask anybody the word pesticide, they assume you mean insecticide. And rarely anybody uses insecticide on the lawn. So that may be the confusion, saying, no, we don't use any pesticide. But really what we mean is pesticide is an umbrella word for all of them, all three. And so maybe it's more accurate to say we don't want to use any weed killers on the lawn, something like that. So, yeah, that's good. Yes?
I guess I just want to say thank you for taking the leadership. I work with the ITAM committee with the school district, and it's great to hear that you guys are having conversations with them. And,
that's great.
And having we're not going to spray, are you sure you want to spray? And I think that's great. I also was wondering if the city would be open to using some of those signs. I think as a parent, it would just, and I'm a parent of 3 small kids, it would be great to go to the park and to see that, safe for kids to play, pesticide free, and to see those kind of spread from there.
Totally.
I think that we need to work to kind of recognize the city for what they're already doing. 'Cause
And help them. Yeah, you guys, again, as a group, you could help communicate city's accomplishment and move in that direction. That's a great, and those signs are all yours. I can send the high resolution designs to the group and, totally. You can print it. Yes.
Have you had a chance to review the school district spraying policy? Because to their credit, they've stopped spraying. But as I understand it now, there's a committee of 21, maybe Phil could comment on this, a committee of 21 people to sort of study this issue. That sort of begs the question, why is there this degree of complexity to this particular issue? And if I understand your presentation, you're saying it's a simple
Okay,
as-
yeah. First of all, I don't know. I mean, I assume the locals have studied. Okay, but one thing I'll say, and then you can. My presentation only dealt with outdoor. Now, indoor, it's not as, it's also very doable. And the problem with indoor is, first of all, there are many options that are non-pesticidal. And again, it often, okay, let's say you in your own home, you come home and there's a bunch of ants crawling around. If you go and spray those ants over there, wow, you solved the problem. No. There's some other reason the ants are here, right? And IPM, indoor IPM, I mean, and even what's the name of the company that, one of the famous? Orkin. Even if you listen to one of their Orkin web, things, it just, number one, identify, what the source is. This, again, IPM is like, really think about this. Spraying is like the last thing, and it's probably the least effective thing. And so really coming up with, I would say outdoor in some ways is pretty easy. You just say, forget it, we'll do other management. Indoor really requires some agreement on, under what circumstances you would have to, use any pesticides. And again, from what I've learned, I talked with Mark Schauer too, he's at ISU, and there's other people who know a lot more about indoor pest control. But from everything I know, it's also very possible to totally not use pesticides indoor, insecticides indoor. But yeah,
Yes. To Rockney's question, I'm a school board member here.
Great.
And our integrated pest management committee has 35 or more community members and administrators and district officials on it. And yes, you described it very well. Our intent is to have the least bad alternative. But as many of the people on the committee know, the district employees want to use pesticides. And that's kind of, we're getting a lot of pushback on that. And gosh, your talk is so so much of what we've encountered in the committee. It's like, yeah, what you want us to let them go to sea, they'll go.
That's right.
Terrible. Yeah. But no, absolutely. We had, as a district, a herbicide-free policy going back to like '93. And we had an outside contractor that did it, and only in very limited instances could they use pesticides. But when they brought the service in, and they found that they could not keep up with the trimming and things like that, then they went completely the other way and started spraying around trees, spraying fence lines, spraying playground equipment, just so they wouldn't have to mechanically trim.
Yeah.
And that's where then the community has had to push back and everything that way. But you described essentially what we're facing with this committee to a T.
Yeah.
And it is changing the attitudes.
Yes, you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say, it seems to me that this is an issue with, Iowans care a lot about their children and about education, and it would seem to me to start with educating people and children, especially, on the effects of their parents and their children and their health, and teach the children that, the children actually don't need to be taught. They love dandelions. They think they're beautiful, and often a mother's first gift is a dandelion in the summertime. So we're teaching our children that dandelions are ugly and not good enough, you know, and so I think pushing, get to city council and keep bringing up that issue, to also go to the city council or school meetings and keep bringing up that issue, and, you know, really fight for the health part of it, you know, that this is jeopardizing our children's health and other people who might use parks a lot, like athletes, and really push for that.
Yeah? Mike?
Primary, you were talking about the signs. 3 or 4 of my neighbors around me spray.
Yeah.
And they have a chemical lawn company come in,
Yeah.
and then they put those little signs that say that they spray chemicals. Well, I would like to use your little your signs and make small versions of those and put them in my lawn, which I haven't sprayed since I bought the house 13 years ago, anything on it. And it has beautiful clovers, it has beautiful dandelions, violets, has some creeping Charlie that I'm not so happy with. But, you know, and have a little pesticide-free lawn sign. And you can call it a Hawkeye lawn or whatever you want, but say that I'm a proud non-sprayer. I'd love to have little signs like that.
Yep. Yes.
I've read several cases of old cemeteries being cleaned up with sheep and goats. And in fact, some farmers are raising those animals just to rent them out for, you know, temporarily for cleaning. Why couldn't that be done in town? Why not have a sheep or a goat on the schoolyard, both for the kids' benefits and to clean up the yard?
Totally, yeah. I mean,
I think, you know, that would.
Kamiar, I lived in Cedar Falls during the early part of your term on council, and I distinctly remember that you were this voice of reason on the council, and you were a lone wolf essentially. You didn't have the community behind you to really make anything happen. And let's say that you were on council again, and you had a progressive majority, or a majority of 3 thinkers together.
Let's say.
What low-hanging fruit? What things would you have wanted to accomplish with that majority if you could do it over again?
Take notes, right?
I have to think about that. Well, I mean, like I said, I think this would be pretty easy in my mind. You know, just like a part. Again, the things that the city did, the park department did on their own without any council approval, right? They just said, okay, the park division manager said, these are the parks we're not going to spray. That's it. You have our word for it. And I went and installed those signs, you know, the pesticide-free signs. So, you know, it's like no council. It really almost shouldn't require a council. I mean, it could be the park policy. That's it. You know, just this is our policy. Now, maybe the council needs to approve it. Maybe not. I really don't know. But I would say a lot of the other issues that you know, energy and food, those other policies those are the ones, public transportation, fair housing, minimum wage, right? To me, those are the ones that are tougher and involve much more long-term planning, though, again, so what would be, for example, on this topic, you know, daycare centers. I mean, the city, as local government is really an incredible institution, a wonderful, incredible institution, you know, and we can do a lot if we participate in it, and as you have, right, and you know, as it shows here, and so they could be a voice of kind of inspiring everybody by their own actions, saying, okay, we're doing it on our own property. Daycare centers. Have you thought about this? We're going to host workshops. The city can be a force in convening. City can have a convening role by inviting the school's staff, ground staff, and extension and others coming and learning about these IPM for indoor pest control. There's just a lot of good stuff out there to, again, convening people, building, connecting the dots in the community in ways that maybe the school district didn't think about, but somebody, the city says, look, we're all in the same boat. The city has to do indoor pest control too, right? Everybody has to do indoor pest control, but what are they doing? Did you hear the hotels? Did you hear that story of the couple who went to? I saw that this weekend, and it was on local TV. I was kind of shocked. A couple had gone to the Caribbean for their vacation, and they walked into their hotel room, and then they were taken to the emergency room. They almost, the kids had seizures. I mean, just like that. I mean, they almost died. They went for a vacation, and what was it? They had used formaldehyde as pest control illegally in the rooms below them, in the first floor. Amazing. I mean, just Google Caribbean hotel pesticides. And EPA is now investigating it. So the question is, what do hotels use for indoor pest control? Again, not as a way of passing an ordinance, but as a way of starting the conversation, right? And saying, hey, there are alternatives to this. Let's start, green businesses. And I'm talking specifically on this topic. There's many other places we could, directions we could go with that. But anyway, yes.
I went to a workshop recently, and there's a lot of people here that were at that workshop, so I have the feeling they'll hold me very accountable if I say anything contrary to the workshop. But what the joy of it was that the entire workshop was about taking a look at laws in our system that allow for the destruction of an ecosystem. And basically taking a close look and saying, are those legal laws to allow toxicity to enter into the water, the soil, or the air, or whatever. And I think what the joy of that workshop, I'll just say, a lot of 100 grannies were there, but the joy of the workshop was that over and over and over again, it came back to what you said in terms of it's somewhat easy to do if we keep remembering that, we can breathe calmly and see that, there's a little difference between the two places up there, but overall, we can deal with that. But it's a little harder to deal with our kids in the hospital, and the wellness and the wholeness of the whole system is when anybody is allowed to destroy an ecosystem, that's when both parties, people of diverse backgrounds, have a common goal. We all have kids, grandkids. It takes a community to stay whole. And so that's why I'm so glad you're here, and I guess I didn't say too much because I don't see a whole bunch of hands saying, but it takes the left wing and the right wing of a bird to fly.
Yeah. Yes, Fred. Jeff.
So what's the takeaway? Typically in the Acropolis Forum, there's a takeaway. We had petitions for solar in the schools and cities. We had petitions for the community gardens. We had all sorts of activities for our bicycling. What's the feeling in this room? We didn't have a petition tonight because we didn't really know where we're at. In fact, it's wonderful to get information from the city. I think if the city has told us publicly that they don't spray, that's something to celebrate, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so, I'm wondering, is the takeaway, do we need to say, hey, Jen, stand up and take a list of people who are willing to go to the next city council meeting and with our signs and say, we want to celebrate Iowa City as being on the cutting edge of a pesticide-free city. And we'd like to put little signs in all the parks and public greens and parking lots. Everywhere that you say you're pesticide-free, we want to celebrate that as a beautiful thing. Who would be into something like that? Who would support that kind of action? Okay, well, Ariane, can we get a little list back there to sign up?
There's your yellow sheet back there. Use that.
And then I guess the next step would be who would want these signs? We can crank out as many signs as you'd like who would like to start taking these signs and begin passing them out to our
How big are
neighbors?
they? What's the size?
How big are they?
Oh, they're about this size, you know. Yeah, maybe, yeah, 10 by 10, kind of, you know. Yeah, they're not,
Really
they're
big
not.
ones, too. 10 yards by
They're-
10 yards.
Yeah,
She has one in her yard if you want.
yeah, I mean, it's about 10 inches by 10 inches, kind of, yeah. And with a kind of all kind of like a designed like a school sign, kind of that's what, oh, I don't know if I wish I had the, yeah.
Well, let's say, so if you're interested, please sign up and we will deliver signs to you.
Oh, maybe.
To put both in your lawn and to take to your neighbors, perhaps a religious institution or community group, or of the 1,000 brownies now.
It seems like it was just a good idea to get them passed out to everybody. And then they have a target for kind of the moment out at once. And that would be in the spring, about the same time that the lawn care companies start going out. Just before they do that, you know, when spring is coming, obviously, in March. So that things are beginning and the snow's gone and it's beginning to look like maybe we'll have spring again. And then everybody put them out at once.
Great
And
idea.
spend our time in the winter organizing the distribution effort for these sold.
That's a great idea. It could be a, you know, not a flag day, but an
No
unveiling day.
pesticide,
Right.
no spray, no.
First day of spring. March
And
21st.
we've, you know, knowing your politics, we're going to give you 10 special freedom lawns.
Well, for a long time, I had one in my front yard that said a perfect lawn is the sign of a disordered mind.
Could we also include them in the virtual backpack at the Iowa City School District and have kids take them home to their parents?
So that's good.
That's a great idea.
Nice. It's a great idea for the school board.
I don't know.
In religious institutions, you know, think of all the churches, synagogues, and
You could send something home with your kids that said, don't poison your kids.
I just wonder, I mean, add places where the city might put them up, or the school district, or the county, or larger. I keep driving by that ACT building up there on North Dodge for years, and I thought, why the hell don't they plant a prairie on that piece of ground? God damn it. And they never done it, and I've never written them and asked them to, so maybe it's my fault. But on some of the bigger pieces of property, if we could put something up like the realtors use when they have a house for sale, and they have those little boxes where you can take out a thing that tells you all the information about the house, and that would provide some educational information as to why this effort is being undertaken, and using some of the sources that you cited, and there are hundreds of them out there that are very valid sources, because people, at least the people that would pick that stuff up, would then read it and understand more why, because to make this assumption that people are just going to get it, that pesticides are bad, when countered against your argument about how people have been acculturated into wanting perfect yards, we really need an educational component that goes with it. And I don't think you can ask each individual homeowner to be grinding out little leaflets, but I think we could expect something like that from the larger entities like the city and the county.
great idea.
We have caucuses coming up on February 1st. What about a resolution to present to vote for the caucus?
Yeah? I mean,
It would get it further than Iowa City, Johnson County. It would get it, if they were adopted, it would go on to.
It's a great idea. Let's go ahead, you know, once again, sign your name up and email or phone number, and we'll contact you and follow up with these kind of ideas. Would you be interested as the winter goes? Obviously, we're going into the long winter, and when the ice finally breaks, we can begin to solve.
I think if that backyard abundance plant sale in the spring, I think we definitely will have, it would be good to have some there, and that might be a good avenue for us to engage people that might also want signs in their yard. But so, yeah, there's a yellow sheet going around on the side and a white pad on the side. We're kind of making do. So please let us get your name and best contact info.
There's a question. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm just so excited what you're doing. It's really wonderful. Anything I can help with, I'll be happy to. I think maybe specifically with schools, once you're at a point where you need a policy, that's where nitty-gritty details where really some of you could all be part of that discussion to figure out, okay, what if there is some, always leave for indoor. I'm specifically, what are some, whose permission, should there be a group that somebody needs to clear this with before any pesticides are applied? Indoor is really even more dangerous than outdoors. Herbicides are different than insecticides. Insecticides really damage nervous system. They're pretty serious, pretty dangerous thing, and they're indoor. They stay for a long time, some of them, depending on what they are. So the indoor application is very troublesome. And so it's really important to have very good, again, learning from other states and all the incredible resources. There are pediatricians down the street who could really help make sure this holds water, and that public health people aren't saying, "Oh, if we don't do this, there's going to be ants and cockroaches." No. Again, there are good IPM strategies. There are a lot of tools. There's baits. There's traps. There's this. There's that. None of them involve pesticides. Again, best wishes. I'm so glad you're doing this. It hopefully will inspire many others. I intend to be of help as much as I can.
Come here, drove all the way down from Cedar Falls.
Thank you.
He's going to be launching his campaign for mayor.
Right.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, of course.
Please go about and please sign up so we can follow